presentation on the film The Needle by Rashid Nukmanov. So to get started, I think it's a little important to talk about the director, his influences for the film, and his background in film. So the director was born on March 19th, 1954 in the Kazakh SSR. He studied at the Moscow State Film Institute, and he was credited for founding the Kazakh New Wave movement. To explain what the New Wave is, I think it's more of placing an emphasis on the artistic and thematic qualities of a film, rather than focusing on the overall narrative and the plot of the film. So his debut film, The Needle, was talking about controversial issues which were really not brought to light in Soviet film. This film in particular deals with drug addiction. Finally, I'd like to end this section with a quote from the director himself about his influence in the New Wave. "We demand no unified philosophy nor uniform artistic views on art. We are unified instead in our freedom and love of art." So, to continue, another very influential figure on this film was Viktor Tsoi. He plays the main character, Moro, in the film. So a little bit about Tsoi. He was born in Leningrad on June 21st, 1962. He was of the Soviet rock band Kino. He was the singer and songwriter. And this band overall was very popular and influential within the Soviet Union. Some of his songs featured political messaging, which was emblematic of the perestroika. One song in particular that comes to mind is "We Want Changes," which obviously could be referring to the reforms of perestroika and glasnost. Tsoi unfortunately passed away on August 15th, 1990 in a car accident. So a little bit about the film before we get into the weeds of it. The Needle was commissioned by Kazakh Film, and under the reforms of glasnost and perestroika, the kind of risque themes within this film were able to be utilized rather than suppressed by any sort of rigid guidelines that they had to follow. So they had much more freedom when they were creating this film. The soundtrack of the film featured the actual music of Kino, and you'll see this within the film itself. It kind of goes with what is going on within the film. The film brought even more domestic and international fame to Kino, and it's the first of the Kazakh New Wave genre. So let's get into the characters. The first character here is Moro, played by Viktor Tsoi. He is a drifter. He seems to have a affinity for fighting. He had a relationship with Dina, and this character to the right, Spartak, is a criminal, and he owes money to Moro. He is Moro's main motivation for going to this city in Kazakhstan for leaving Moscow. He is here to get money from this man. This lady here, this is Dina. This is the ex-girlfriend of Moro, as I said before. In the film, she's kind of revealed to be a morphine addict. She's also a nurse, and this kind of explains where she gets her morphine from. This fella on the right here is Artur Yusupovich. He is a doctor, but he is also a drug dealer, and he is selling morphine to Dina here. It's also implied that they have some sort of relationship, but this is not expanded upon much. All right, let's get into the plot. Yeah, honestly, not a lot of characters in this film, but yeah, the plot starts off with Moro, as I said before, going to the city of Alma-Ata in Kazakhstan to collect his debt from Spartak. The very first thing that's Moro does is he actually calls his girlfriend because he kind of needs a place to stay. But after he makes his phone call after getting off the bus, he goes to Spartak's place of work. And Spartak here is avoiding him. He asks his boss where he is. He doesn't really tell him. He eventually searches around the workplace, finds Spartak. He confronts him a little bit. He's obviously very nervous because he owes money to this man. They do agree to meet the following day at a cafe called the Parliament. After he confronts Spartak, he goes to the shooting range where his ex-girlfriend Dina is shooting some guns. This is where he asks her if he can stay at her house. Importantly, she does say to not answer the door and not to answer the telephone, which is quite odd, but we'll see why that is here in a minute. She agrees to let him stay at the apartment for the time being while he tries to get a debt from Spartak. And while Moro is staying in her apartment, he notices this man, Artur Yusupovich. He walks in. He doesn't really... Well, I guess he does notice Moro, and he goes to the fireplace, and he places something there. So after Archer leaves, Moro goes to the fireplace, and he sees what this is, and it's morphine. So Moro obviously is a little inquisitive about this. He calls the number that Dina gave him if something ever happened at the apartment itself. It's the number to a hospital, so he learns that she works at the hospital. And here he tries to kind of, figure out what the deal is with this guy, who he is, what's her relationship with him. But really, he's not really able to extract much information, and she just kind of tells him to leave. So after that, Moro goes to the Parliament where he meets with Spartak to kind of discuss his debts. In this scene, it is revealed that Spartak has a lot of people that he owes money to. Like a lot of people. There's like at least 10 people he owes money to. He gets beat up by these guys who he owes money to, but Moro kind of stops them from beating him up. Because I guess, so he does owe money to Moro, but he still is, I guess, friends with him. So, yeah, he stops that guy from beating him up. After this, he goes back to the apartment where he sees Dina, and she is shooting up morphine, confirming his earlier suspicions that she was using morphine. So after he finds out that she's using morphine, they both agree to go to the Aral Sea. Now, if you do not know about the Aral Sea, it's a former lake, and it's now dried up because of Soviet irrigation projects. But yeah, so they go to the Aral Sea. Importantly, they had been here before when they were a couple. Just trying to get away from the city. A little bit of the escapism and that type of theme, which I will delve into further here later. So while they are staying in the Aral Sea, Moro decides to hide the morphine from her. So he basically makes her quit cold turkey, and she goes through these terrible withdrawals, which you'll see later. But come 2 weeks, she seems to be fine, and the worst of the withdrawals are seemingly gone. And they decide to go back to the city. But almost immediately after they get back to the city, Moro notices Artur Yusupovich, He's at the apartment because he knows that she's back. But Morrow just gives him the rest of her morphine. And what Archer does here is very interesting. So he leaves with the morphine he got from Morrow, and he breaks it all. And then he shows this to his mafia friends, which are waiting outside for him in the car. So from what I kind of got from this is that he's kind of sicking the mafia on Morrow here. So next in this scene, we see Morrow. He is trying to track down Spartak. He teams up with some of the other creditors to Spartak. This man right here is named Archimedes. And they go to this, it looks like an old circus ground. That's what it looks like. And they find Spartak. They give him yogurt. I'm not sure of the significance of that. But Spartak has gone insane and he is crazy. He is rambling. During his ramblings, he puts up this barrel and he stands on it and he starts making this speech that one almost like a Soviet leader. I compared it to Lenin. Just the framing of this still right here and this propaganda poster, it looks very similar, and I kind of have to wonder if it's intentional. So to the speech itself, Spartak he sounds very authoritative and very, he has this tempo about it that he sounds like he's making a speech to, thousands of people. But in reality, the camera pans to the audience, and it's Morrow, Archimedes, and this guy in the jacket here. They're all sitting in the audience, and it shows this abandoned circus ground, and nobody's there, but he's still making this speech. It's almost feels very symbolic. But yeah, I found that scene very fascinating. We encounter some of the mafia goons, which I guess were hired by Archer to find out where the glass is. That's what they ask. Where is the glass? Morrow's obviously a little confused about this. He's not really sure what they mean by glass. So they say the glass is either going to be here in 10 minutes or we're going to have a completely different conversation. And obviously the completely different conversation alluding to violence. So obviously Morrow does not have the morphine because he gave it to Archer, who destroyed it. And they get into a fight. And this fight is it's not really shown. So after that fight, seemingly, he goes back to the apartment. And here he discovers that Dina has relapsed. She is back on morphine, and yeah, it's not good. So, two of the last scenes here, Morrow decides to confront Archer. He is swimming in this pool. It's really weird. It's like this round pool, and it's pretty deep. I've never really seen anything like it, but yeah, he's swimming in there. They eventually drain the pool, and kind of like Spartak, Archer makes this speech here as well. So after the pool's completely drained, Morrow and his friends hand him his clothes, and he's facing the wall and he's making this speech. And once he's done, he turns around and he notices they're not even there. So, to come to the final scene, it's Morrow. He is walking on this road. It's snowy out. This is right after he was talking to, well, I suppose not talking, but being talked to by Archer. He encounters this fellow with a fedora, and this guy just immediately stabs him after asking a light for a cigarette. And this guy was shown earlier outside of Dina's apartment, so it's implied that he's part of the mafia. And Victor Soy is seen walking off. Morrow is seen walking off in the distance here, and his fate is kind of unknown. It's unsure whether he lives or dies. So to sum it all up, pretty quickly, drifter named Morrow. He comes to the city looking to collect his debts from Spartak. Stays with his ex-girlfriend Dina, discovering her drug addiction, her addiction to morphine, and they both decide to go to the desert and force her to quit cold turkey. Seemingly it works, and she doesn't relapse or have any difficulties. But once they go back to the city, Dina relapses, and Archer sends the mafia after Morrow. Morrow confronts Archer and his thugs, and also Spartak. Finally, Morrow is stabbed, and his fate is unknown. Excuse me. The film overall paints kind of a dark picture of the Soviet Union. It shows a lot of organized crime, a lot of fighting. It shows almost like the failure of Soviet projects with the filming in the Aral Sea. It shows the problem of drug abuse and drug addiction, which was starting to be a problem. The film itself is not very oriented around the plot, but more so around the characters and the symbolism, the themes, and such, which is just emblematic of the new wave genre. So to compare it to the film we watched this week, Intergirl, the comparison that I drew is that both of these movies both drew a comparison between escapism. Both of these people kind of seem to want to escape the realities of the Soviet Union. In Intergirl, Tanya idolizes the West, and she ends up marrying a Swede and moving to Sweden and living this glamorous life in Sweden. She's able to literally escape the Soviet Union. If we look at The Needle, well, Dina doesn't really have this opportunity to literally escape, so she kind of resorts to morphine usage so she can at least mentally escape from the reality around her. So we're going to look at this scene, which I thought was quite interesting. Wrong time. All right. So with that scene, I think it's quite obvious what is being shown here, but it's like a montage of shots. It's building this tension. You hear this heavy breathing and grunting, and Dina here is shown kind of shaking, rocking back and forth. She's clearly in visible discomfort. Through this cinematography, through this capturing of the kind of like the moment and the feelings of Dina, we're able to kind of experience her feelings of going cold turkey, of being sort of, off this morphine which she's been used to, and just the intense reality of that, and the tension and the discomfort and just the visceralness of it. And finally, with the imagery of the scorpions. Like there's this kind of gritty sound, and this all these scorpions are like crawling over each other. It's a very cramped and just tense, gritty situation, and I just found this scene to be particularly interesting in capturing that, that experience of going cold turkey, and that the problems of drug abuse, and just the intense reality of it all. So that's my presentation. Thank you very much for watching.